Welcome to Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. Join the podcast mogul Phil Better as he interviews successful entrepreneurs that make their living in the digital world. Now, let's join your host, Phil Better, and his special guest today on Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Invest in Yourself, the podcast series, a show focused on amplifying the reach of podcasters and podcast professionals, like our guest today, who is the founder of Outlier Audio, a full-service podcast booking agency that represents talented entrepreneurs, business professionals, and investors who specialize in real estate. Before being in the podcasting space, our guest spent over a decade in the music industry, taking on various roles, including talent management and representation, event and festival organizing, record label head, and so much more. He pivoted to the podcasting space like many people when the music space shut down due to COVID-19. And he saw the need to help entrepreneurs, investors, and business professionals get on the new medium as a way to continue growing their business. Since 2020, our guest has booked over 800 plus interviews that have garnered millions of listens for over 150 talented entrepreneurs, business professionals, and investors. His clients range from solopreneurs to published authors, investment funds with over $1 billion under management, Inc. 500 companies, and top 10 keynote speakers, all using podcasts to grow their business. So without further ado, let me welcome our guest, Spencer Carpenter, to the podcast. Spencer, welcome back.
Phil, thanks for having me. I always appreciate the fantastic introduction.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast series. I know we spoke before on the digital entrepreneur version of the Invest in Yourself network. So I'm happy to have you back because you provide a service to podcasters. And I think it's important that podcasters get to know the people behind some of the services they use. So I want to thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And, I'll kick this off just by saying to all the podcasters out there, my service is free to you. I'm someone that presents you with, I try to fill your void of, guests, holes in your calendar, guests that you're trying to have onto the show. So I just want to make sure off the bat, you all know that, this is something where we can connect and maybe I can help you out with bringing some people to the show.
A true win-win mentality, and I love that. And that's why I wanted, when I interviewed you on the Digital Entrepreneur Show, you explained that the side for the podcasters is free. You just want a roster of podcasters, because the more podcasts you have, the more you can charge the clients and help bring bigger names to the podcasts. So it started because of COVID. How did you know that there was a need to be the go-between, the middle person?
Yeah, so I had I found podcasts years before COVID and was listening to them as an alternative to listening to audiobooks, which I just found to be boring and monotone. And once I found, that you could learn things and have educational conversations through podcasts, I was like, whoa, this is a way better medium. And as I started getting into listening to things like real estate podcasts, I would hear people that to their own description of themselves were like idiots, or they didn't do well in school, or they had no special tools, but they were out there being able to flip a house and make 50 grand on it. And as a new real estate investor, I was like, well, I'm not an idiot and I've never even seen 50 grand. So there's something this person is doing that is really valuable. And it dawned on me that unless you are someone like Mark Cuban or Richard Branson or someone like that, entrepreneurs are not looked at like talent. And so, people can, you could go your whole life, you could be really successful at what you do. All of your friends, all of your network know who you are, but they know who you are based on your job. You're a real estate agent, you're a financial planner, you're a lawyer. You can be an amazing lawyer, but you're looked at like your job instead of being super talented at law. And just when everything shut down, I saw an opportunity to, shift my focus and help some of these people that were now stuck at home that could not go to conferences or meetups or anything like that, and use podcasts as a way for them to perform, and it wasn't necessarily that podcast was brand new and these people hadn't heard of it. I just recognized most of them probably didn't have the know-how to get on one, or didn't have the time or the infrastructure to devote resources to trying to get on podcasts. And yeah, I just decided I would dive into that. It seemed like it was something that people could really use. And the first step I took before I even had a client was building up a database of 2,000 podcasts that I could reach out to. Because I realized no matter how many clients I have, I need to have a list of podcasts that is 5 to 10 times the size of my client list. That way I have people that obviously need the podcast. Not you could have 5 different entrepreneurship podcasts, but they all don't need the same thing. And so having that variety, I knew was how I was going to be able to fulfill the service for my clients.
Now, what did you do or to find these podcasts? And what can you maybe suggest to podcasts to make it easier for the podcast outreachers and booking services like you to get in contact with them?
Yeah, I mean, initially it was just Googling, or not Googling, going on Apple Podcasts. And at the time, like the first 2 weeks I was building this database, they had a URL to the website for all the podcasts. And like 2 weeks into me doing this, for some reason they took that away. So I could no longer just grab the website from their Apple Podcast listing. And so I would grab the name of the podcast, I'd catalog, I'd grab the host name, I'd see if they had the email listed in the description. If not, I went to the website, I cataloged the website, I then looked for an email, a podcast specific email, a contact page. I listed all of that stuff in my database. And obviously there are lots of podcasts out there that are big and really don't want unsolicited, emails coming in, but there are quite a few that didn't seem to me to be in a position where they were turning a ton of people away. But I couldn't figure out how to find them. They didn't put their contact information in the description. They didn't have a website that had a contact form or even just like an email set up. I mean, contact forms are great, for a lot of people. They think it looks more professional, but it makes it really difficult to submit information with hyperlinks or attachments to one sheets if people use one sheets. Like you can't use that with a lot of the contact forms. And so I really like to be able to submit my clients with the appropriate links and any other attachments and stuff like that. And so even if I found just the contact form, I would spend an extra 5 minutes on every show digging as far down as I could to try and find an email contact and just get it to them directly.
I love that. So your suggestion would maybe in the show notes, make sure that you have a place if you want to apply to be a guest, have an email specific for that. That could help.
I mean, if they want it in the show notes, but if nothing else, make sure just have an email present on your website. Again, some people make the calculated decision not to do that, and if they don't want to, that's their prerogative. But if you want people to get in touch with you, you better make it so that people can contact you.
Now, when you were doing the outreach to these podcasts, did you have any idea of like how to pitch your clients to these shows, or were you just trying different things all the time?
I did some. So coming from music, I had a lot of experience with reaching out to booking agents that represented artists way too big for me to book, and brand. I did sponsorships, so reaching out to brands that I had no idea whether or not I'd get in contact with them. So I kind of had experience with trying to get as complete of a picture written out in an email while being concise. And so I had some practice in that. I've never considered myself a great writer, or like I didn't do super well in English class or anything, but I think I'm really good at writing emails, very specifically emails. Like I know how to add in as much valuable info as possible while skipping over anything that's unnecessary. And so through that, I just was able to pick out like how to structure this, have an intro, a body, a conclusion, and then maybe figure out what is the type of information that doesn't need to be in paragraph format, but maybe in bullet points, that it's easier to digest that way. And, the real thing that I experimented with in the beginning was just the subject line. And I just thought, for some reason, I was like, if I was a podcaster, I wouldn't want to see like podcast guest submission in the title of every email I got coming. I mean, maybe it makes it easier for some people to categorize, but I was like, I also looked at it like I'm trying to get the attention of some people that may not want an unsolicited guest, but I want them to read my guest anyway and change their mind. And so off the bat, I was like, I actually took out like podcast guest submission from my subject line because I was like, well, I want them to look at my person and not just delete it because they saw that it was a submission. You know, I've actually never had anyone give me feedback as to whether or not they like that or don't like that, but you know, I've successfully booked a ton of interviews and
Yeah.
on larger shows. So I kind of do what seems to be working for me.
Now, do you still? I take it that you receive requests from podcasts from time to time, ones that you have either built up a relationship with.
Yeah, there are definitely a few producers out there, or assistants. You know, I'm not sure what exactly their job is all the time that reach out to me and they say, you know, we just had a cancellation. Do you have anybody? Um, and oftentimes I have a new person that like I just never got around to sending their way, or maybe it's someone that hadn't occurred to me to be a guest before, or maybe even someone that they had declined already, but it's like now they're in a pinch and they're willing to make it work. But I would definitely say there are a few producers I work with pretty regularly that kind of, I'm sure, are used to me sending them at least one guest a month, which makes their job a little bit easier.
No, that is very easy. Um, what is your goal with Outlier Media? Like, where do you want to go with it?
Honestly, you know, my intention is not to build it up to this massive agency with a bunch of different agents. You know, I kind of want to be the person that these podcasters think of. I want to have their relationship with the podcaster. You know, again, as important as it is for me to have a large roster of clients, it's more important for me to have a even larger database of podcasts I work with regularly. And so being able to find out, you know, get familiarized with some of these hosts and what it is they want, maybe some of the nuances in things that there might be specific things they don't want. Learning stuff like that is very valuable as well. And just being able to provide value to them. You know, there are lots of clients of mine that I'm not actively working for anymore. But sometimes a host tells me they have a need and a past client of mine can fill that need. And so I give that to my past client for free. Like it's not like I go back to them and say, let's do a whole new round or something. I just plug it into them for free because it fills the need of the host. And so when I'm able to, you know, that's I'm all about win-wins. And it's not you know, again, obviously that what I just explained means it's not just about like someone paying me for a service. You know, I just want to, I know it brings value to the host if I can fill that need last minute. And that makes me a little more memorable. And so being able to connect with more hosts and being able to find out what it is they need and how I can serve them is ultimately just the thing I want to be able to do. So I do go to conferences, you know, podcast specific conferences. I also go to investing conferences and stuff like that. And my goal there is never to sell my service. I figure if I'm going to meet somebody and they hear what I do and they want it, they'll let me know. But it's always for me to meet more podcasters in person so that they know who I am. They know that maybe there's some people that have said like I get unsolicited, you know, pitches all the time, and it's just it really throws me off. You know, I don't really like the way they do it. I don't like feeling like I'm one person out of 100 they reached out to, but if they can get to know me and know that like my intention is to both serve my client and the host and create that win-win for everybody. You know, I've had a few people say like, I don't really like working with podcast booking agents, but now that I know you in person, you know, I will be looking for your emails. So, you know, just being able to find out what the hosts need that's really what I want to be able to do. I don't want to outsource this to a bunch of different people. I want to be the person. That every host thinks of when they have something that they need filled.
Okay, that is amazing, and I'm pretty sure every single one of my listeners here who have a podcast are probably going, "Yeah, I need someone like you in my life." So, what suggestion or tip would you have for people to reach out to a podcast booker? Like, I'm a podcast, I'm looking to get in contact with a booker. what would be your tip? Like, how should I present my show so that you're going to take it more seriously?
I would, I mean, obviously if you have some impressive numbers to share that, but really just reach out and say like, I have a show and I look for these types of guests. Do you have anybody? I mean, if you're reaching out to a podcast booking agent, that means their job is to be booking these interviews. So they're not going to turn you down if they see that they have someone that they can be fulfilling their clients' needs and also helping, a host. Nothing is better for me than someone that says like, who you got? I need to book the next 5 interviews. That means I was just able to fulfill a portion of my, my service to 5 different clients when one host or one, producer tells me that. And quite frankly, when I started off this business, one of the things I did experiment with was I emailed probably 200 podcasts I had not heard back from and just said, hey, I'd like to be of value to you. I'd like to bring you more guests. Could we schedule like a 10-minute call? Or could you let me know what it is you're looking for? That was probably one of the least successful outreach campaigns I ever had. Most people did not respond to me with what they want. And so as a podcast booking agent, if someone reached out to me and told me what it is they need, I would be thrilled. That makes me, that makes me really happy and gives me some room to play with. And maybe I can book up an entire month for somebody and take that off their plate.
Better than a VA. Because you get these amazing guests that you're able to share. So you're a huge resource. And I want to know, why don't you have a podcast?
I know I need one. I know I need to start, preaching practicing what I preach in that regard. Me starting to do podcast interviews like this was that first step. I had a hard time coming up with the concept of what it is I could do that I would be motivated with. The one thing that a lot of people, the reason why podcasts fail or not fail, but stop is just because they lose passion or they're not super interested in it. And so I'm not someone that typically likes being in the spotlight. I don't want it to be a podcast that's around me as a person. And so I need to figure out what that concept is that I could start a podcast around.
So I'm just going to spitball. I have an idea. Since you're a booking agency for podcasts, you can interview your guests and use that as, hey, this is my guest. Here's more about them. And use that as as an episode. You can do a 15-minute episode with them, and it's an onboarding call where you get to learn about them and you release that. So one, you have this you're like, hey, here's some guests. Here are their links to the episodes that they've done with me, so you can get to know them more about them and highlight what is so important or amazing. And it also gives your guests or your clients, if they haven't done a podcast before, they got that training. So you're offering 2 for 1, benefiting both. And then you also can bring in podcasters and those on there to share it with your guests and say, who do you want to be on the show? Who do you want to be interviewing?
That's a great idea. I'm going to write that down.
You're very welcome. And like anybody else could probably now steal that it's out there. But that's what I do. That's what I love about podcasting and helping podcasters is coming up with ideas and shows for them that maximizes. It's the efficiency of podcasting. But yeah, you can use it for media and also media training as well for your clients so that they can get at ease. Because I know a lot of people, when they get into podcasting or being a guest, they're nervous because they don't know what it's like. So breaking that ice in the first time, I'm pretty sure that could be a great idea for you and easily, very easy for you because the guests are coming to you and you're getting paid to podcast.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great idea. And like you're just saying, some people are nervous. I really love to be able to show them just how unnerve-wracking it is. It's not live. It's just a conversation. I like to explain to people that maybe think that that are introverts, explaining to them like, you're not in front of 1,000 people. 1,000 people are going to listen.
Yeah.
But you're not in front of 1,000 people. You're just talking to one person, which any introvert can do. So podcasting is perfect for everybody because of that. Because of the way it's set up in that way. But yeah, that'd be a great idea. I should probably move on that.
There you go. The mogul helping more people and launching more podcasts. My goal is 100 million podcasts. So that's like getting as many podcasts out there. What is it about being that connection? Like, what is that connection? Why do you feel the drive to be the connector between the clients that you have and the podcast? Like, why do you? It seems that you love, like you did it with management, talent management before. It's something that seems to be resonating with your why or with who you are as a person. Like, why is that?
You know, I know I've taken like work type personality exams, and I'm a connector. That's what. But I know that stems from the fact that I got into music because when I was 15, my cousins wouldn't let me into their band. They had 3 guitarists. They didn't need a 4th, and I wasn't very good anyway. And so I was just like, what can I do to stay involved? How can I provide value? And so I decided I was going to start booking shows. And we lived in a small town. I mean, if we wanted to go to a show, we had to drive 45 minutes at a minimum. And, just to get on some of those shows, maybe they had to pay to be on it or they had to sell a bunch of tickets or something like that. And so I was like, let me just book some shows in my town and provide them with shows. And then I can book the bigger bands here and we don't have to fight for those time slots at a different venue. It's like, if I can just bring the headliners here, then I can just put my cousin's band on it all the time. And I don't know, as I continued to get into the music industry, there were lots of ways I recognized I wanted to bring value to people in ways that I couldn't actually monetize. So for example, if an artist on the label I ran needed, cabs, orange cab for their guitar or something like that, I could set up an agreement with that company where we get a discount, a sponsorship. I don't actually get monetized for that agreement. It's just something that's cool to me. I know the guy at Orange Cabs. I can get you that discount. So being a supporter of talent or supportive of really anybody is just something that has always really just kind of been a driver for me. And I looked, when I decided I was going to go into the podcast space full time, I looked at like getting people on bigger podcasts as like getting someone, an artist on a festival. I look at each of one of these top 100 podcasts as like, this is Riot Fest in Chicago, and this one's Coachella, and this one's Warped Tour, and whatever it might be. And I don't when I work with a client, it's not like I get compensated more for getting them on a bigger podcast, but I love being able to say like, I was able to do that for them. And that's just something that's kind of always been what I've done. I've just always been a supporter of talent. That's always been my job.
I love it. And I love how you're supporting, you just took the skills that you had from one industry and you were able to pivot and put it into the next industry and become a success. Who is what is the one podcast that you want to be connected with?
I mean,
having your
obviously I want the biggest. If getting someone on Rogan is Coachella. That's getting an artist on Coachella. I know not everyone's the biggest fan of him these days, but he's still number one, and so that's where my sights are set. And coming into this industry, I was not on a trajectory to get any artist of mine ever on Coachella. I can totally within the next few years have someone on Rogan. I can with enough conversations. It's not a monetary exchange. It's not a negotiation. That's one of the things I like about this industry is like with music, there was always this ego battle. There was money battle. There was stipulations about production and all that stuff. With this, you send an email and it's a yes or a no, or maybe there's a follow-up conversation, but it's much, there's far less friction. And so that's one of my big ones. But besides the biggest, my goal was Bigger Pockets Real Estate Podcast, because that was the one that got me into podcasts, and I had someone on that show earlier this year, and so that was something I spent 2 years working on, and finally was able to make it happen. And so that was my number one, even over like Rogan, was that. And so I did accomplish that.
I'm very familiar with the Bigger Podcast, the Bigger Pockets podcast. A few of my friends are fans of that podcast as well in the real estate world. So, um, we're gonna go to the Spark question. As you know, Spark from the Digital Entrepreneur podcast asked the same one here. They are from ES Theory and Seek Discomfort. Got to spark conversations with strangers because they're friends you haven't met yet. Um, have you ever felt like you could never truly repay someone for something they've done for you? If so, explain.
I definitely think there are times where I think back on the opportunity that someone gave me one opportunity that led to another opportunity that led to another opportunity. And sometimes I do feel like, man, I could never repay that. However, I know that if they gave me an opportunity, I also did something in return for them, because I'm always looking for that opportunity. And, kind of like learning how to value yourself. I think it's also important to to put that same mindset into something like, this kind of thought exercise of like, could I ever repay them? Well, if you provided them value in some way, yeah, like you did it. You don't necessarily have to always feel indebted. And that's something I've actually recently been thinking a lot about. Because I have had a lot of success come from people making introductions or something like that. But I realized that the reason the other opportunities came along is because I delivered. And I was able to I put my skills to work, and I was able to provide value to people. And that's why I continued. So, small favors, obviously just try and do what you can to give back to the person that gave you an opportunity.
I love it. Wise words. I'm going to jump off stage here, Spencer. I want you to tell my audience where they can connect with you, how they can work with you so that they can get some of your clients and help you win so that they can win. So the floor, sir, is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, so you can reach out to me just at my email, spencer@outlieraudio.com. I also am on Instagram at my name, Spencer Carpenter. Our business Instagram is Outlier Audio. Website is outlieraudio.com. I'm on LinkedIn. And, while I specialize in entrepreneurs and business professionals and investors, I represent people in all areas of finance and investing strategy and stuff like that. I also represent a large variety of other, experts. Some are startups in water filtration. I work with people in energy, health supplements, energy supplements, natural energy. I just work with a ton of different people. And if I don't know someone, specifically in my roster, maybe I know someone that does. And that's the type of connection I'm always willing to try and make to bring, value to the host. So if there's anything that you're looking for, if there's any type of client that you typically have on the show, guests that you have on the show, feel free to reach out, and maybe I have someone, or maybe I know someone that knows someone.
Awesome. Spencer, I can't thank you enough for coming on this podcast. I had a great time talking to you with this time, just like I did with the Digital Entrepreneur podcast, which will be also linked down below so that you guys can get a fuller picture of Spencer. Thank you again for coming on the show and sharing and being a resource for podcasters.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
To my audience, of course, the show notes will have all the links to connect with Spencer. I would highly suggest it because he's going to help you fill your calendar if you're looking for guests. And look, it's the hardest thing to get guests. So if you have someone doing the work for you and you don't have to pay for it, you're in the books here. It's saving you time and money. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much to our guest Spencer for you listening, and remember to always invest in yourself.